Paradise Lost by John Milton, with Ian McDiarmid as Satan and Federe Holmes as Eve. Episode 30, in which the serpent tempts Eve to taste the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Sovereign of creatures, universal Dame.
So talked the spirited, sly snake, and Eve, yet more amazed, unwary, thus replied.
Serpent, thy overpraising leaves in doubt the virtue of that fruit in thee first proved. But say, where grows the tree? From hence how far? For many are the trees of God that grow in paradise.
Oh, Empress, the way is ready, and not long. Beyond a row of myrtles, on a flat, fast by a fountain, one small thicket past, of blowing myrrh and balm. If thou accept my conduct, I can bring thee thither, soon.
Lead then,
said Eve. He, leading, swiftly rolled in tangles, and made intricate seem straight, to mischief swift. Hope elevates and joy brightens his crest, as when a wandering fire, compact of unctuous vapour, which the night condenses, and the cold environs round, kindled through agitation to a flame, which oft, they say, some evil spirit attends, hovering and blazing with delusive light, misleads the amazed night-wanderer from his way to bogs and mires, and oft through pond or pool, there swallowed up and lost, from succour far. So glistered the dire snake, and into fraud led Eve, our credulous mother, to the tree of prohibition, root of all our woe, which when she saw, thus to her guide she spake.
Serpent, we might have spared our coming hither, fruitless to me, though fruit be here to excess, the credit of whose virtue rest with thee, wondrous indeed, if cause of such effects. But of this tree we may not taste nor touch. God so commanded, and left that command sole daughter of his voice. The rest we live law to ourselves. Our reason is our law.
Indeed. Hath God then said that of the fruit of all these garden trees ye shall not eat, yet lords declared of all in earth or air?
Of the fruit of each tree in the garden we may eat. But of the fruit of this fair tree amidst the garden God hath said, Ye shall not eat thereof, nor shall ye touch it, lest ye die.
She scarce had said, though brief, when now more bold the tempter, all impassioned, thus began.
O sacred, wise, and wisdom-giving plant, mother of science, now I feel thy power within me clear, not only to discern things in their causes, but to trace the ways of highest agents, deemed however wise. Queen of this universe, do not believe those rigid threats of death. Ye shall not die. How should ye? By the fruit. It gives you life to knowledge. By the threatener? Look on me, me who have touched and tasted, yet both live, and life more perfect have attained than fate meant me, by venturing higher than my lot. Shall that be shut to man, which to the beast is open? Or will God incense his ire for such a petty trespass, and not praise rather your dauntless virtue, whom the pain of death denounced, whatever thing death be, deterred not from achieving what might lead to happier life, knowledge of good and evil. Of good, how just? Of evil, if what is evil be real, why not known, since easier shunned? God, therefore, cannot hurt ye and be just. Not just, not God, not feared then, nor obeyed. Your fear itself of death removes the fear. Why then was this forbid? Why but to awe? Why but to keep ye low and ignorant his worshippers? He knows that in the day ye eat thereof, your eyes that seem so clear, yet are but dim, shall perfectly be then opened and cleared, and ye shall be as gods, knowing both good and evil as they know. That ye should be as gods, since I as man, internal man, is but proportion meet. I of brute human, ye of human gods. So ye shall die, perhaps, by putting off human to put on gods. Death to be wished, though threatened, which no worse than this can bring. And what are gods, that man may not become as they, participating god-like food? The gods are first, and that advantage use on our belief that all from them proceeds. I question it. For this fair earth I see, warmed by the sun, producing every kind, them nothing. If they all things, who enclosed knowledge of good and evil in this tree, that whoso eats thereof forthwith attains wisdom without their leave? And wherein lies the offence that man should thus attain to know? What can your knowledge hurt him, or this tree impart against his will, if all be his? Or is it envy? And can envy dwell in heavenly breasts? These and many more causes import your need of this fair fruit. Goddess humane, reach then, and freely taste.
He ended, and his words, replete with guile, into her heart too easy entrance won. Fixed on the fruit she gazed, which to behold might tempt alone, and in her ears the sound yet rung of his persuasive words, impregned with reason to her seeming, and with truth. Meanwhile the hour of noon drew on, and waked an eager appetite, raised by the smell so savoury of that fruit, which with desire, inclinable now grown to touch or taste, solicited her longing eye. Yet first, pausing a while, thus to herself she mused.
In the day we eat of this fair fruit, our doom is, we shall die. How dies the serpent? He hath eaten, and lives, and knows, and speaks, and reasons, and discerns, irrational till then. For us alone was death invented. Or to be denied this intellectual food for beasts reserved? For beast it seems. Yet that one beast which first hath tasted envies not, but brings with joy the good befallen him, author unsuspect, friendly to man, far from deceit or guile. What fear I then? Rather, what know to fear, under this ignorance of good and evil, of God or death, of law or penalty? Here grows the cure of all, this fruit divine, fair to the eye, inviting to the taste, of virtue to make wise. What hinders then to reach and feed at once both body and mind?
So saying, her rash hand in evil hour forth reaching to the fruit, she plucked, she ate. Earth felt the wound, and nature from her seat, sighing through all her works, gave signs of woe that all was lost. Back to the thicket slunk the guilty serpent, and well might, for Eve, intent now wholly on her taste, naught else regarded, such delight till then as seemed in fruit she never tasted, whether true or fancied so, through expectation high of knowledge, nor was Godhead from her thought. Greedily she engorged without restraint, and knew not eating death. Satiate at length, and heightened as with wine, jocund and boon, thus to herself she pleasingly began.
O sovereign, virtuous, precious of all trees in paradise, of operation blessed to sapience, hitherto obscured, infamed, and thy fair fruit let hang as to no end created, but henceforth my early care, not without song, each morning, and due praise shall tend thee, and the fertile burden ease of thy full branches, offered free to all, till dieted by thee I grow mature in knowledge, as the gods who all things know, though others envy what they cannot give. for had the gift been theirs, it had not here thus grown. Experience, next to thee I owe best guide. Not following thee, I had remained in ignorance. Thou open'st wisdom's way, and giv'st access, though secret she retire. And I perhaps am secret. Heaven is high, high and remote, to see from thence distinct each thing on earth. And other care perhaps may have diverted from continual watch our great forbidder, safe with all his spies about him. But to Adam, in what sort shall I appear? Shall I to him make known as yet my change, and give him to partake full happiness with me? Or rather not, but keep the odds of knowledge in my power without co-partner, so to add what wants in female sex, the more to draw his love, and render me more equal, and perhaps, a thing not undesirable, sometimes superior, for inferior who is free? This may be well, but what if God have seen, and death ensue? Then I shall be no more, and Adam, wedded to another Eve, shall live with her enjoying, I extinct, a death to think. Confirmed then I resolve, Adam shall share with me in bliss or woe. So dear I love him, that with him all deaths I could endure, without him live no life.
So saying, from the tree her step she turned. Adam the while, waiting desirous her return, had wove of choicest flowers a garland to adorn her tresses, and her rural labours crown, as reapers oft are wont their harvest queen. Great joy he promised to his thoughts, and new solace in her return, so long delayed. Yet oft his heart, divine of something ill, misgave him. He the faltering measure felt, and forth to meet her went, the way she took that morn when first they parted. By the tree of knowledge he must pass. There he her met, scarce from the tree returning. In her hand a bough of fairest fruit, that downy smiled, new gathered, and ambrosial smell diffused. To him she hasted, in her face excuse came prologue, and apology to prompt, which with bland words at will she thus addressed.
Hast thou not wondered, Adam, at my stay? Thee I have missed, and thought it long deprived thy presence. Agony of love till now not felt, nor shall be twice, for nevermore mean I to try what rash untried I sought, the pain of absence from thy sight.
In the 30th episode of Paradise Lost, Federe Holmes was Eve, Ian McDermott was Satan, and the narrator was Dennis Quilley. Paradise Lost by John Milton, abridged by Adrian Mitchell, with Linus Roach as Adam and Federe Holmes as Eve. Episode 31, in which Eve persuades Adam to taste the forbidden fruit.
This tree is not, as we are told, a tree of danger tasted, nor to evil unknown opening the way, but of divine effect to open eyes, and make them gods who taste, and have been tasted such. The serpent wise, or not restrained as we, or not obeying, hath eaten of the fruit, and is become, not dead, as we are threatened, but thenceforth endued with human voice, and human sense, reasoning to admiration, and with me persuasively hath so prevailed, that I have also tasted, and have also found the effects to correspond. Opener mine eyes, dim erst, dilated spirits, ampler heart, and growing up to Godhead, which for thee chiefly I sought, without thee can despise, for bliss, as thou hast part, to me is bliss, tedious unshared with thee, and odious soon. Thou therefore also taste, that equal lot may join us, equal joy as equal love. Lest thou not tasting, different degree disjoin us, and I, then too late, renounce deity for thee, when fate will not permit.
Thus Eve with countenance blithe her story told, but in her cheek distemper flushing glowed. On the other side, Adam, soon as he heard the fatal trespass done by Eve, amazed, astonished stood and blank, while horror chill ran through his veins, and all his joints relaxed. From his slack hand the garland wreathed for Eve down dropped, and all the faded roses shed. Speechless he stood and pale, till thus at length first to himself he inward silence broke.
O fairest of creation, how art thou lost, how on a sudden lost, defaced, deflowered, and now to death devote! And me with thee hath ruined, for with thee certain my resolution is to die. How can I live without thee? How forego thy sweet converse and love so dearly joined, to live again in these wild woods forlorn? Should God create another Eve, and I another rib afford? Yet loss of thee would never from my heart. No, no, I feel the link of nature draw me. Flesh of flesh, bone of my bone thou art, and from thy state mine never shall be parted, bliss or woe.
So having said, as one from sad dismay recomforted, and after thoughts disturbed, submitting to what seemed remediless, thus in calm mood his words to Eve he turned.
Bold deed thou hast presumed, adventurous Eve, and peril great provoked. But past who can recall, or done undo? Nor can I think that God, creator wise, though threatening, will in earnest so destroy us, his prime creatures, dignified so high, set over all his works, which in our fall, for us created, needs with us must fail. However, I with thee have fixed my lot, certain to undergo like doom. If death consort with thee, death is to me as life. So forcible within my heart I feel the bond of nature draw me to my own in thee. For what thou art is mine. Our state cannot be severed. We are one flesh. To lose thee were to lose myself.
O glorious trial of exceeding love, Adam, from whose dear side I boast me sprung, and gladly of our union hear thee speak, one heart, one soul in both, whereof good proof this day affords, declaring thee resolved, rather than death or aught than death more dread shall separate us, linked in love so dear, to undergo with me one guilt, one crime, if any be, of tasting this fair fruit. This my attempt, I would sustain alone the worst, and not persuade thee, but I feel far otherwise the event, not death, but life augmented, opened eyes, new hopes, new joys, taste so divine that what of sweet before hath touched my sense, flat seems to this, and harsh. On my experience, Adam, freely taste, and fear of death deliver to the winds.
So saying, she embraced him, and for joy tenderly wept, much won that he his love had so ennobled as of choice to incur divine displeasure for her sake, or death. In recompense, for such compliance bad, such recompense best merits, from the bough she gave him of that fair enticing fruit with liberal hand. He scrupled not to eat against his better knowledge, not deceived, but fondly overcome with female charm. Earth trembled from her entrails, as again in pangs, and nature gave a second groan. Sky lowered, and muttering thunder some sad drops wept at completing of the mortal sin original. While Adam took no thought, eating his fill, nor Eve to iterate her former trespass feared, the more to soothe him with her loved society, that now, as with new wine intoxicated both, they swim in mirth, and fancy that they feel divinity within them, breeding wings wherewith to scorn the earth. But that false fruit far other operation first displayed. Carnal desire inflaming, he on Eve began to cast lascivious eyes, she him as wantonly repaid. In lust they burn, till Adam thus 'gan Eve to dalliance move.
Much pleasure we have lost, while we abstained from this delightful fruit, nor known till now true relish tasting. If such pleasure be in things to us forbidden, it might be wished for this one tree had been forbidden 10. But come, so well refreshed, now let us play, as meet is after such delicious fare. For never did thy beauty, since the day I saw thee first and wedded thee, adorned with all perfections, so inflame my sense with ardour to enjoy thee, fairer now than ever, bounty of this virtuous tree.
So said he, and forbore not glance or toy of amorous intent, well understood of Eve, whose eye darted contagious fire. Her hand he seized, and to a shady bank, thick overhead with verdant roof embowered, he led her, nothing loath. Flowers were the couch, pansies and violets and asphodel and hyacinth, earth's freshest, softest lap. There they their fill of love and love's disport took largely, of their mutual guilt the seal, the solace of their sin, till dewy sleep oppressed them, wearied with their amorous play. Soon as the force of that fallacious fruit, that with exhilarating vapour bland about their spirits had played, and inmost powers made err, was now exhaled, and grosser sleep, bred of unkindly fumes, with conscious dreams encumbered, now had left them, up they rose, as from unrest, and each the other viewing, soon found their eyes how opened, and their minds how darkened. Innocence, that as a veil had shadowed them from knowing ill, was gone. They destitute and bare of all their virtue, silent, and in face confounded, long they sat, as strucken mute, till Adam, though not less than Eve abashed, at length gave utterance to these words constrained.
O Eve, in evil hour thou didst give ear to that false worm, of whomsoever taught to counterfeit man's voice, true in our fall, false in our promised rising. Since our eyes opened, we find indeed, and find we know both good and evil, good lost and evil got. Bad fruit of knowledge, if this be to know, which leaves us naked thus. How shall I behold the face henceforth of God or angel, erst with joy and rapture so oft beheld? Oh, might I here in solitude live savage, in some glade obscured, where highest woods impenetrable to star or sunlight spread their umbrage broad and brown as evening. Cover me, ye pines, ye cedars, with innumerable boughs hide me, where I may never see them more. But let us now, as in bad plight, devise what best may for the present serve to hide the parts of each from other, that seem most to shame obnoxious, and unseemliest seen. Some tree whose broad smooth leaves together sewed, and girded on our loins, may cover round those middle parts, that this newcomer, shame, there sit not, and reproach us as unclean.
So counselled he, and both together went into the thickest wood. There soon they chose the fig tree, gathering its broadest leaves, and with what skill they had together sewed, to gird their waist. Vain covering it to hide their guilt and dreaded shame. Oh, how unlike to that first naked glory! Thus fenced, and, as they thought, their shame in part covered, but not at rest or ease of mind, they sat them down to weep. Nor only tears rained at their eyes, But high winds worse within began to rise, high passions, anger, hate, mistrust, suspicion, discord, and shook sore their inward state of mind. Calm region once and full of peace, now tossed and turbulent.
Would thou hadst hearkened to my words, and stayed with me as I besought thee, when that strange desire of wandering this unhappy morn, I know not whence possessed thee. We had then remained still happy.
What words have passed thy lips, Adam severe? Impute thou that to my default, or will of wandering, as thou call'st it, which who knows but might as ill have happened thou being by, or to thyself perhaps? Hadst thou been there, or hear the attempt, thou couldst not have discerned fraud in the serpent, speaking as he spake. No ground of enmity between us known, why he should mean me ill or seek to harm. Was I to have never parted from thy side, as good have grown there still a lifeless rib? Being as I am, why didst not thou, the head, command me absolutely not to go, going into such danger as thou saidst?
Is this the love, is this the recompense of mine to thee, ingrateful Eve, expressed immutable when thou wert lost? Not I, who might have lived and joyed immortal bliss, yet willingly chose rather death with thee. And am I now upbraided as the cause of thy transgressing? Not enough severe, it seems, in thy restraint. What could I more? I warned thee, I admonished thee, foretold the danger and the lurking enemy that lay in wait.
Thus they in mutual accusation spent the fruitless hours, but neither self-condemning, and of their vain contest appeared no end.
In the 31st episode of Paradise Lost, Federe Holmes was Eve, Linus Roach Adam, and the narrator Dennis Quilley. Paradise Lost by John Milton, with Dennis Quilley as the poet. Episode 32, in which God sends his Son to judge Adam and Eve.
Up into heaven, from paradise, in haste the angelic guards ascended, mute and sad for man, for of his state by this they knew, much wondering how the subtle fiend had stolen entrance unseen. Soon as the unwelcome news from earth arrived at heaven gate, displeased all were who heard. Dim sadness did not spare that time celestial visages, yet mixed with pity violated not their bliss. About the new arrived in multitudes the ethereal people ran, to hear and know how all befell. They towards the throne supreme, accountable, made haste to make appear with righteous plea their utmost vigilance, and easily approved, when the Most High Eternal Father from his secret cloud, amidst in thunder, uttered thus his voice.
Assembled angels, and ye powers returned from unsuccessful charge, be not dismayed, nor troubled at these tidings from the earth, which your sincerest care could not prevent, foretold so lately what would come to pass, when first this tempter crossed the gulf from hell. I told ye then he should prevail and speed on his bad errand. Man should be seduced and flattered out of all, believing lies against his Maker, no decree of mine concurring to necessitate his fall, or touch with lightest moment of impulse his free will to her own inclining left in even scale. But fallen he is, and now what rests, but that the mortal sentence pass on his transgression, death denounced that day, which he presumes already vain and void, because not yet inflicted as he feared by some immediate stroke, but soon shall find forbearance no acquittance ere day end. Justice shall not return as bounty scorned. But whom send I to judge them? Who but thee, vicegerent son, to thee I have transferred all judgment, whether in heaven or earth or hell. Easy it may be seen that I intend mercy colleague with justice, sending thee, man's friend, his mediator, his designed both ransom and redeemer voluntary, and destined man himself to judge man fallen.
So spake the Father, and unfolding bright toward the right hand his glory, on his Son blazed forth unclouded deity. He, full resplendent, all his Father manifest expressed, and thus divinely answered mild.
Father eternal, thine is to decree, mine both in heaven and earth to do thy will supreme, that thou in me, thy Son beloved, mayst ever rest well pleased. I go to judge on earth these thy transgressors, but thou know'st, whoever judged, the worst on me must light. When time shall be, for so I undertook before thee, and not repenting this obtain of right, that I may mitigate their doom on me derived. Yet I shall temper so justice with mercy, as may illustrate most them fully satisfied, and thee appease.
Thus saying, from his radiant seat he rose of high collateral glory, him thrones and powers, princedoms and dominations ministrant, accompanied to heaven gate, from whence Eden and all the coast in prospect lay. Down he descended straight. The speed of gods time counts not, though with swiftest minutes winged. Now was the sun in western cadence low from noon, and gentle airs, due at their hour to fan the earth, now waked, and usher in the evening cool, when he from Rothmoor cool came the mild judge and intercessor both, to sentence man. The voice of God they heard now walking in the garden, by soft winds brought to their ears while day declined. They heard, and from his presence hid themselves among the thickest trees, both man and wife, till God, approaching, thus to Adam called aloud.
Where art thou, Adam, wont with joy to meet my coming seen far off? I miss thee here, not pleased, thus entertained with solitude, where obvious duty erewhile appeared unsought. Or come I less conspicuous? Or what change absents thee? Or what chance detains? Come forth!
He came, and with him Eve, more loath, though first to offend, discountenanced both and discomposed. Love was not in their looks, either to God or to each other, but apparent guilt and shame and perturbation and despair, anger and obstinacy and hate and guile. Whence Adam, faltering long, thus answered brief.
I heard thee in the garden, and of thy voice afraid, being naked, hid myself.
My voice thou oft hast heard, and hast not feared, but still rejoiced. How is it now become so dreadful to thee, that thou art naked? Who hath told thee? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I gave thee charge thou shouldst not eat?
O heaven, in evil strait this day I stand before my judge, either to undergo myself the total crime, or to accuse my other self, the partner of my life, whose falling, while her faith to me remains, I should conceal, and not expose to blame by my complaint. Yet thou wouldst easily detect what I conceal. This woman, whom thou madest to be my help, and gavest me as thy perfect gift, so good, so fit, so acceptable, so divine, that from her hand I could suspect no ill, and what she did, whatever in itself, her doings seemed to justify the deed. She gave me of the tree, and I did eat.
Was she thy God, that her thou didst obey before his voice? Or was she made thy guide superior? Or but equal, that to her thou didst resign thy manhood, and the place wherein God set thee above her, made of thee and for thee, whose perfection far excelled hers in all real dignity, Adorned she was indeed, and lovely, to attract thy love, not thy subjection. And her gifts were such as under government well seemed, unseemly to bear rule, which was thy part and person, hadst thou known thyself aright. Say, woman, what is this which thou hast done?
The serpent me beguiled, and I did eat.
Which when the Lord God heard, without delay to judgment he proceeded on the accused, and on the serpent thus his curse let fall.
Because thou hast done this, thou art accursed above all cattle, each beast of the field. Upon thy belly grovelling thou shalt go, and dust shalt eat all the days of thy life. Between thee and the woman I will put enmity, and between thine and her seed. Her seed shall bruise thy head, thou bruise his heel.
And to the woman thus his sentence turned.
Thy sorrow I will greatly multiply by thy conception. Children thou shalt bring in sorrow forth, and to thy husband's will thine shall submit. He over thee shall rule.
On Adam last thus judgment he pronounced.
Because thou hast hearkened to the voice of thy wife, and eaten of the tree concerning which I charge thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat thereof, cursed is the ground for thy sake. Thou in sorrow shalt eat thereof all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles it shall bring thee forth unbid. And thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for thou out of the ground wast taken. Know thy birth, for dust thou art, and shalt to dust return.
So judged he man, both judge and saviour sent, and the instant stroke of death, denounced that day, removed far off. Then, pitying how they stood before him naked to the air, that now must suffer change, disdained not to begin thenceforth the form of servant to assume. As when he washed his servants' feet, so now, as father of his family, he clad their nakedness with skins of beasts, or slain, or as the snake with youthful coat repaid, and thought not much to clothe his enemies, nor he their outward only with the skins of beasts, but inward nakedness, much more opprobrious, with his robe of righteousness, arraying covered from his father's sight. To him with swift assent he up-returned, into his blissful bosom reassumed in glory as of old. To him appeased all, though all-knowing, what had passed with man recounted, mixing intercession sweet. Meanwhile, ere thus was sinned and judged on earth, within the gates of hell sat sin and death, in counter-view within the gates, that now stood open wide, belching outrageous flame far into chaos, since the fiend passed through, sin opening, who thus now to death began.
O son, why sit we here each other viewing idly, while Satan, our great author, thrives in other worlds, and happier seat provides for us, his offspring dear? Methinks I feel new strength within me rise, wings growing, and dominion given me large beyond this deep. Whatever draws me, thou inseparable must with me along, for death from sin no power can separate. But lest the difficulty of passing back stay his return, perhaps, over this gulf impassable, impervious, let us try adventurous work, yet to thy power and mine not unagreeable, to found a path over this main from hell to that new world where Satan now prevails, a monument of merit high to all the infernal host, easing their passage hence.
Go with a fate and inclination strong leads thee. I shall not lag behind, nor err the way. Thou leading, such a scent I draw of carnage, prey innumerable,
and taste the savour of death from all things there that live. Nor shall I to the work thou enterprisest be wanting, but afford thee equal aid.
So saying, with delight he snuffed the smell of mortal change on earth, as when a flock of ravenous fowl, though many a league remote, against the day of battle, to a field where armies lie encamped, come flying, lured with scent of living carcasses, designed for death the following day in bloody fight. So scented the grim feature, and upturned his nostril wide into the murky air, sagacious of his quarry from so far.
In the 32nd episode of Paradise Lost, Dennis Quilly was the narrator. The other readers were Godfrey Canton, Robert Glenister, Linus Roach, Federe Holmes, Steve Hodgson, and Margaret Robertson. Paradise Lost by John Milton, with Dennis Quilly as the poet and Ian McDermott as Satan. Episode 33, in which sin and death construct a highway leading from hell to earth.
Then sin and death, from hell into the waste, wide anarchy of chaos, damp and dark, flew diverse, and with power, their power was great, hovering upon the waters. What they met, solid or slimy, as in raging sea tossed up and down, together crowded drove from each side, shoaling towards the mouth of hell. The aggregated soil, death with his mace petrific, cold and dry, as with a trident smote, and fixed as firm as Delos, floating once. The rest his look bound with Gorgonian rigour not to move, and with asphaltic slime. Broad as the gate, deep to the roots of hell, the gathered beach they fastened, and a pier immense wrought on, over the foaming deep high arched, a bridge of length prodigious, joining to the wall immovable of this now fenceless world, forfeit to death. From hence a passage broad, smooth, easy, inoffensive, down to hell. Now had they brought the work by wondrous art pontifical, a ridge of pendant rock over the vexed abyss, following the track of Satan to the selfsame place where he first lighted from his wing, and landed safe from out of chaos to the outside bare of this round world. With pins of adamant and chains they made all fast. Too fast they made, and durable. And now in little space the confines met of Empyrean heaven and of this world, and on the left hand hell with long reach interposed. 3 several ways in sight to each of these 3 places led. And now their way to earth they had descried, to paradise first tending, when, behold, Satan, in likeness of an angel bright, betwixt the centaur and the scorpion, steering his zenith, while the sun in Aries rose. Disguised he came, but those his children dear their parents soon discerned, though in disguise. He, after Eve seduced, unminded slunk into the wood fast by, and changing shape to observe the sequel, saw his guileful act, by Eve, though all unwitting, seconded upon her husband, saw their shame that sought vain covertures, but when he saw descend the Son of God to judge them, terrified he fled, not hoping to escape, but shun the present, fearing guilty what his wrath might suddenly inflict. That past, returned by night, and listening where the hapless pair sat in their sad discourse and various plaint, thence gathered his own doom, which understood not instant, but of future time. With joy and tidings fraught, to hell he now returned, and at the brink of chaos, near the foot of this new wondrous pontifice, unhoped, met who to meet him came, his offspring dear. Great joy was at their meeting, and at sight of that stupendous bridge his joy increased, long he admiring stood, till Sin, his fair enchanting daughter, thus the silence broke.
O parent, these are thy magnific deeds, thy trophies, which thou view'st as not thine own. Thou art their author and prime architect. For I no sooner in my heart divined, my heart which by a secret harmony still moves with thine, joined in connection sweet, that thou on earth hadst prospered, which thy looks now also evidence. But straight I felt, though distant from thee worlds between, yet felt that I must after thee with this thy son. Such fatal consequence unites us three. Hell could no longer hold us in her bounds, nor this unvoyageable gulf obscure detain from following thy illustrious track. Thou hast achieved our liberty, confined within hell gates till now. Thou us empowered to fortify thus far, and overlay with this portentous bridge the dark abyss. Thine now is all this world. Thy virtue hath won what thy hands builded not. Thy wisdom gained with odds what war hath lost, and fully avenged our foil in heaven. Here thou shalt, monarch, reign.
Whom thus the Prince of Darkness answered glad.
Fair daughter, and thou son, and grandchild both, high proof ye now have given to be the race of Satan. For I glory in the name, antagonist of heaven's almighty King, amply have merited of me, of all the infernal empire, that so near heaven's door triumphal with triumphal act have met. Mine with this glorious work, and made one realm, hell and this world, one realm, one continent of easy thoroughfare. Therefore, while I descend through darkness on your road with ease to my associate powers, them to acquaint with these successes, and with them rejoice, you too this way, among these numerous orbs, all yours, right down to paradise descend. There dwell and reign in bliss. Thence on the earth dominion exercise, and in the air chiefly on man, so Lord of all declared. Him first make sure your thrall, and lastly kill. My substitutes I send ye, and create plenipotent on earth, of matchless might issuing from me. On your joint vigour now my hold of this new kingdom all depends. If your joint power prevail, the affairs of hell no detriment need fear. Go and be strong.
So saying, he dismissed them. They with speed their course through thickest constellations held, spreading their bane. The blasted stars looked wan, and planets, planet-struck, real eclipse then suffered. The other way Satan went down the causeway to Hell Gate. Through the gate, wide open and unguarded, Satan passed, and all about found desolate. For those appointed to sit there had left their charge, flown to the upper world. The rest were all far to the inland retired, about the walls of Pandemonium, city and proud seat of Lucifer, so by allusion called of that bright star to Satan paragoned. There kept their watch the legions, while the grand in council sat, solicitous what chance might intercept their emperor sent, so he departing gave command, and these, the late heaven-banished host, left desert, utmost hell, many a dark league, reduced in careful watch round their metropolis, and now expecting each hour their great adventurer from the search of foreign worlds. He through the midst, unmarked, in show plebeian angel militant of lowest order, passed, and from the door of that Plutonian hall, invisible, ascended his high throne, which under state of richest texture spread, at the upper end was placed in regal lustre. Down a while he sat, and round about him saw unseen, At last, as from a cloud, his fulgent head and shape star-bright appeared, or brighter, clad with what permissive glory since his fall was left him, or false glitter. All amazed at that so sudden blaze, the Stygian throng bent their aspect, and whom they wished beheld, their mighty chief returned. Loud was the acclaim. Forth rushed in haste the great consulting peers, raised from their dark divan, and with like joy congratulant approached him, who with hand silence, and with these words attention won.
Thrones, dominations, princedoms, virtues, powers, for in possession such, not only of right, I call ye and declare ye now, return successful beyond hope, to lead ye forth triumphant out of this infernal pit, abominable, accursed, the house of woe and dungeon of our tyrant. Now possess, as lords, a spacious world, to our native heaven little inferior, by my adventure hard, with peril great, achieved. Long were to tell what I have done, what suffered, with what pain voyaged the unreal, vast, unbounded deep of horrible confusion. But I found the new created world, which fame in heaven long had foretold, a fabric wonderful, of absolute perfection. Therein man, placed in a paradise, by our exile made happy. Him by fraud I have seduced from his creator, and the more to increase your wonder, with an apple. He, thereat offended, worth your laughter, hath given up both his beloved man and all his world, to sin and death a prey, and so to use, without our hazard, labour, or alarm, to range in and to dwell, and over man to rule, as over all he should have ruled. True is, me also he hath judged, or rather, me not, but the brute serpent, in whose shape man I deceived. That which to me belongs is enmity, which he will put between me and mankind. I am to bruise his heel. His seed, when is not set, shall bruise my head. A world who would not purchase with a bruise, or much more grievous pain. Ye have the account of my performance. What remains, ye gods, but up, and enter now into full bliss?
So having said, a while he stood, expecting their universal shout and high applause to fill his ear, when contrary he hears on all sides from innumerable tongues a dismal universal hiss, the sound of public scorn. He wondered, but not long had leisure, wondering at himself now more. His visage drawn he felt to sharp and spare, his arms clung to his ribs, his legs entwining each other, till supplanted down he fell, a monstrous serpent on his belly prone, reluctant, but in vain. A greater power now ruled him, punished in the shape he sinned, according to his doom. He would have spoke, but hiss for hiss returned with forked tongue to forked tongue, for now were all transformed alike to serpents, all as accessories to his bold riot. Dreadful was the din of hissing through the hall, thick swarming now with complicated monsters, head and tail, scorpion and asp, and amphisbaena dire, and dipsas. But still greatest he, the midst, now dragon grown, larger than whom the sun engendered in the Pythian vale on slime, huge Python, and his power no less he seemed above the rest still to retain.
In the 33rd episode of Paradise Lost, the narrator was Dennis Quiddy. The other readers were Ian McDermott and Margaret Robertson. The director was John Theocaris. Paradise Lost by John Milton. with Dennis Quilly as the poet and Linus Roach as Adam. Episode 34, in which sin and death begin their schemes for Earth. But first, the devils who have been turned into serpents taste the fruit of disobedience.
Those complicated monsters followed Satan, now dragon-grown, issuing forth to the open field, where all yet left of that revolted rout, heaven-fallen, in station stood, or just array, sublime with expectation when to see in triumph issuing forth their glorious chief. They saw, but other sight instead, a crowd of ugly serpents. Horror on them fell, and horrid sympathy, for what they saw they felt themselves now changing. Down their arms, down fell both spear and shield, down they as fast, and the dire hiss renewed, and the dire form catched by contagion, like in punishment as in their crime. Thus was the applause they meant turned to exploding hiss, triumph to shame cast on themselves from their own mouths. There stood a grove hard by, sprung up with this their change, his will who reigns above, to aggravate their penance, laden with fair fruit, like that which grew in paradise, the bait of Eve used by the tempter. On that prospect strange their earnest eyes they fixed, imagining for one forbidden tree a multitude now risen, to work them further woe or shame, yet parched with scalding thirst and hunger fierce, though to delude them sent, could not abstain. But on they rolled in heaps, and up the trees climbing, sat thicker than the snaky locks that curled Megeera. Greedily they plucked the fruitage fair to sight, like that which grew near that bituminous lake where Sodom flamed. This more delusive, not the touch, but taste deceived. They, fondly thinking to allay their appetite with gust, instead of fruit, chewed bitter ashes, which the offended taste with spattering noise rejected. Oft they essayed, hunger and thirst constraining, drugged as oft, with hatefullest disrelish writhed their jaws, with soot and cinders filled. Meanwhile in paradise the hellish pair too soon arrived. Sin there in power before, once actual, now in body, and to dwell habitual habitant. Behind her death close following pace for pace, not mounted yet on his pale horse, to whom sin thus began.
Second of Satan sprung, all-conquering death. What thinkst thou of our empire now? Though earned with travail difficult, not better far than still at hell's dark threshold to have sat watch, unnamed, undreaded, and thyself half-starved.
Whom thus the sin-born monster answered soon.
To me, who with eternal famine pine, alike is hell or paradise or heaven. There best, where most with raven I may meet, which here, though plenteous, all too little seems to stuff this maw, this vast and hide-bound corpse.
Thou therefore on these herbs and fruits and flowers feed first, on each beast next, and fish and fowl, no homely morsels, and whatever thing the scythe of time mows down, devour unspared. Till I, in man residing through the race, his thoughts, his looks, words, actions, all infect, and season him thy last and sweetest prey.
This said, they both betook them several ways, both to destroy or unimmortal make all kinds, and for destruction to mature sooner or later. Which the Almighty seeing, from his transcendent seat the saints among,
I called and drew them thither, my hell-hounds, to lick up the draught and filth which man's polluting sin with taint hath shed on what was pure, till crammed and gorged, nigh burst with sucked and glutted offal, at one sling of thy victorious arm, well-pleasing Son, both sin and death and yawning grave at last, through chaos hurled, obstruct the mouth of hell forever, and seal up his ravenous jaws.
Now the Creator, calling forth by name his mighty angels, gave them several charge, as sorted best with present things. The sun had first his precept, so to move, so shine, as might affect the earth with cold and heat scarce tolerable, and from the north to call decrepit winter, from the south to bring solstitial summer's heat. To the blank moon her office they prescribed, to the other 5 their planetary motions and aspects. To the winds they set their corners, when with bluster to confound sea, air, and shore, the thunder when to roll with terror through the dark aerial hall. Thus began outrage from lifeless things. But discord first, daughter of sin among the irrational, death introduced through fierce antipathy. Beast now with beast gan war, and fowl with fowl, and fish with fish, to graze the herb all leaving, devoured each other. Nor stood much in awe of man, but fled him, or with countenance grim glared on him passing. These were from without the growing miseries which Adam saw already in part, though hid in gloomiest shade, to sorrow abandoned, but worse felt within, and in a troubled sea of passion tossed, thus to disburden sought with sad complaint.
O miserable of happy, is this the end of this new glorious world, and me so late the glory of that glory, who now become accursed of blessed? Hide me from the face of God, whom to behold was then my height of happiness. Yet well, if here would end the misery, I deserved it, and would bear my own deservings. But this will not serve. All that I eat or drink, or shall beget, is propagated curse. O voice once heard delightfully, increase and multiply, now death to hear. For what can I increase or multiply but curses on my head? Who of all ages to succeed, but feeling the evil on him brought by me, will curse my head? Ill fare our ancestor impure, for this we may thank Adam. But his thanks shall be the execration. Did I request thee, Maker, from my clay to mould me man? Did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me, or here place in this delicious garden? As my will concurred not to my being, it were but right and equal to reduce me to my dust, desirous to resign, and render back all I received, unable to perform thy terms too hard, by which I was to hold the good I sought not. To the loss of that sufficient penalty, why hast thou added the sense of endless woes? Inexplicable thy justice seems. Yet to say truth, too late I thus contest. God made thee of choice his own, and of his own to serve him. Thy reward was of his grace. Thy punishment then justly is at his will. Be it so. For I submit, his doom is fair, that dust I am, and shall to dust return. O welcome hour whenever! Yet one doubt pursues me still, lest all I cannot die, lest that pure breath of life, the spirit of man, which God inspired, cannot together perish with this corporeal clod. Then, in the grave, or in some other dismal place, who knows but I shall die a living death? O thought, horrid if true! Yet why? It was but breath of life that sinned. What dies but what had life and sin? The body properly hath neither. All of me then shall die. Let this appease the doubt, since human reach no further knows. For though the Lord of all be infinite, is his wrath also? But if it should transpire that death be not one stroke, as I supposed, bereaving sense, but endless misery from this day onward, which I feel begun both in me and without me, and so last to perpetuity, ay me, that fear comes thundering back with dreadful revolution on my defenceless head. Both death and I am found eternal, and incorporate both. Nor I, on my part, single. In me all posterity stands cursed. Fair patrimony that I must leave ye, sons. Oh, were I able to waste it all myself, and leave ye none. So disinherited, how would ye bless me now, your curse? Ah, why should all mankind for one man's fault thus guiltless be condemned, if guiltless? But from me what can proceed but all corrupt, both mind and will depraved, not to do only, but to will the same with me? How can they then acquitted stand in sight of God? Him after all disputes, forced I absolve. All my evasions vain, and reasonings, though through mazes, lead me still but to my own conviction. First and last on me, me only, as the source and spring of all corruption, all the blame light due. So might the wrath, fond wish, couldst thou support that burden heavier than the earth to bear, than all the world much heavier, though divided with that bad woman?
Thus Adam to himself lamented loud through the still night. Not now, as ere man fell, wholesome and cool and mild, but with black air accompanied, with damps and dreadful gloom, which to his evil conscience represented all things with double terror. On the ground outstretched he lay, on the cold ground, and oft cursed his creation. Death as oft accused of tardy execution, since announced the day of his offence.
Why comes not death with one thrice acceptable stroke to end me? Shall truth fail to keep her word, justice divine not hasten to be just? But death comes not at call. Justice divine mends not her slowest pace for prayers or cries. O woods, O fountains, hillocks, dales, and bowers, with other echo late I taught your shades to answer, and resound far other song.
In the 34th episode of Paradise Lost, the readers were Dennis Quilley, Margaret Robertson, Steve Hodgson, Godfrey Kenton, and Linus Roach. Paradise Lost by John Milton, with Linus Roach as Adam. Episode 35, in which Adam urges Eve to join him in seeking peace with God by repentance.
Desolate where she sat, when Eve beheld Adam afflicted and approaching nigh, soft words to his fierce passion she essayed, but her with stern regard he thus repelled.
Out of my sight, thou serpent! That name best befits thee with him leagued, thyself as false and hateful. Nothing wants but that thy shape like his, and colour serpentine, may show thy inward fraud, to warn all creatures from thee henceforth, lest that too heavenly form, pretended to hellish falsehood, snare them. But for thee I had persisted happy, had not thy pride and wandering vanity, when least was safe, rejected by forewarning, and disdained not to be trusted, longing to be seen, though by the devil himself, him overweening to overreach, but with the serpent meeting, fooled and beguiled, by him thou, I by thee, to trust thee from my side, imagined wise, constant, mature, proof against all assaults, and understood not all was but a show rather than solid virtue, all but a rib, crooked by nature, bent, as now appears, more to the part sinister from me drawn, well, if thrown out, as supernumerary to my just number found. Oh, why did God, Creator wise, that peopled highest heaven with spirits masculine, create at last this novelty on earth, this fair defect of nature, and not fill the world at once with men as angels without feminine, or find some other way to generate mankind?
He added not, and from her turned. But Eve, not so repulsed, with tears that ceased not flowing, and tresses all disordered, at his feet fell humble, and, embracing them, besought his peace, and thus proceeded in her plaint.
Forsake me not thus, Adam. Witness heaven what love sincere and reverence in my heart I bear thee, and unwitting have offended, unhappily deceived. Thy suppliant, I beg and clasp thy knees. Bereave me not whereon I live, thy gentle looks, thy aid, thy counsel in this uttermost distress, my only strength and stay. Forlorn of thee, whither shall I betake me, where subsist? While yet we live, scarce one short hour perhaps, between us two let there be peace, both joining, as joined in injuries, one enmity against a foe by doom express assigned us, that cruel serpent. On me exercise not thy hatred for this misery befallen, on me already lost, me than thyself more miserable. Both have sinned, but thou against God only, I against God and thee. And to the place of judgment will return, there with my cries importune heaven, that all the sentence from thy head removed may light on me, sole cause to thee of all this woe, me only, just object of his ire.
She ended, weeping, and her lowly plight, immovable till peace obtained from fault acknowledged and deplored, in Adam wrought commiseration. Soon his heart relented towards her, his life so late and sole delight, now at his feet submissive in distress. Creature so fair, his reconcilement seeking, his counsel whom she had displeased, his aid. As one disarmed, his anger all he lost, and thus with peaceful words upraised her soon.
Unwary, and too desirous as before, so now of what thou know'st not, who desirest the punishment all on thyself. Alas, bear thine own first, ill able to sustain his full wrath, whose thou feel'st as yet least part, and my displeasure bear'st so ill. If prayers could alter high decrees, I to that place would speed before thee, and be louder heard, that on my head all might be visited, thy frailty and infirmer sex forgiven, to me committed, and by me exposed. But rise, let us no more contend, nor blame each other, blamed enough elsewhere, but strive in offices of love, how we may lighten each other's burden in our share of woe. Since this day's death denounced, if aught I see will prove no sudden, but a slow-paced evil, a long day's dying to augment our pain, and to our seed, oh, hapless seed derived.
Adam, by sad experiment I know how little weight my words with thee can find, found so erroneous, thence by just event found so unfortunate. Nevertheless, restored by thee, vile as I am, to place of new acceptance, hopeful to regain thy love, the sole contentment of my heart, living or dying, from thee I will not hide what thoughts in my unquiet breast are risen, tending to some relief of our extremes, or end, though sharp and sad, yet tolerable, as in our evils, and of easier choice. If care of our descent perplex us most, which must be borne to certain woe, devoured by death at last, and miserable it is to be to others cause of misery, our own begotten, and of our loins to bring into this cursed world a woeful race, that after wretched life must be at last food for so foul a monster. In thy power it lies, yet ere conception, to prevent the race unblessed, to being yet unbegot. Childless thou art, childless remain, so death shall be deceived his glut, and with us too be forced to satisfy his ravenous maw. But if thou judge it hard and difficult, conversing, looking, loving, to abstain from love's due rites, nuptial embraces sweet, and with desire to languish without hope, before the present object languishing with like desire, which would be misery and torment less than none of what we dread, then both ourselves and seed at once to free from what we fear for both, let us make short. Let us seek death, or he not found, supply with our own hands his office on ourselves. Why stand we longer shivering under fears that show no end but death, and have the power of many ways to die the shortest choosing, destruction with destruction to destroy?
She ended here, or vehement despair broke off the rest. So much of death her thoughts had entertained, as dyed her cheeks with pale. But Adam with such counsel nothing swayed, to better hopes his more attentive mind labouring had raised, and thus to Eve replied.
Eve, thy contempt of life and pleasure seems to argue in thee something more sublime and excellent than what thy mind contemns. But self-destruction therefore sought refutes that excellence thought in thee, and implies not thy contempt, but anguish and regret for loss of life and pleasure over-loved. Or if thou covet death as utmost end of misery, so thinking to evade the penalty pronounced, doubt not but God hath wiselier armed his vengeful ire than so to be forestalled. Much more I fear, lest death so snatched will not exempt us from the pain we are by doom to pay. Rather, such acts of contumacy will provoke the highest to make death in us live. Then let us seek some safer resolution, which methinks I have in view, calling to mind with heed part of our sentence, that thy seed shall bruise the serpent's head. Piteous amends, unless be meant, whom I conjecture, our grand foe Satan, who in the serpent hath contrived against us this deceit. To crush his head would be revenge indeed, which will be lost by death brought on ourselves, or childless days resolved as thou proposest. So our foe shall scape his punishment ordained, and we instead shall double ours upon our heads. No more be mentioned then of violence against ourselves, and wilful barrenness, that cuts us off from hope, and savours only rancour and pride, impatience and despite, reluctance against God and his just yoke laid on our necks. Remember with what mild and gracious temper he both heard and judged without wrath or reviling. We expected immediate dissolution, which we thought was meant by death that day, when lo, to thee pains only in childbearing were foretold, and bringing forth, soon recompensed with joy, fruit of thy womb. On me the curser slope glanced on the ground. With labour I must earn my bread. What harm? Idleness had been worse. My labour will sustain me. And, lest cold or heat should injure us, his timely care hath unbesought provided, and his hands clothed us unworthy, pitying while he judged. How much more, if we pray him, will his ear be open, and his heart to pity incline, and teach us further by what means to shun the inclement season, rain, ice, hail, and snow, which now the sky with various face begins to show us in this mountain, while the winds blow moist and keen, shattering the graceful locks of these fair-spreading trees, which bids us seek some better shroud, some better warmth to cherish our limbs benumbed, ere this diurnal star leave cold the night. How we his gathered beams reflected may with matter dry ignite, or by collision of two bodies grind the air attrite to fire, as late the clouds, justling or pushed with winds rude, in their shock Tine the slant lightning, whose thwart flame driven down kindles the gummy bark of fir or pine, and sends a comfortable heat from far, which might supply the sun. Such fire to use, and what may else be remedy or cure to evils which our own misdeeds have wrought, he will instruct us, praying, till we end in dust, our final rest and native home. What better can we do, that to the place repairing where he judged us, prostrate fall before him reverent, and there confess humbly our faults, and pardon beg, with tears watering the ground, and with our sighs the air frequenting, sent from hearts contrite, in sign of sorrow unfeigned, and humiliation meek. Undoubtedly he will relent and turn from his displeasure, in whose look serene, when angry most he seemed and most severe, what else but favour, grace, and mercy shone?
So spake our father, penitent, nor Eve felt less remorse. They forthwith to the place repairing where he judged them, prostrate fell before him, reverent. And both confessed humbly their faults, and pardon begged, with tears watering the ground, and with their sighs the air frequenting, sent from hearts contrite, in sign of sorrow unfeigned, and humiliation meek.
In the 35th episode of Paradise Lost, Adam and Eve were Linus Roach and Federe Holmes. The narrator was Dennis Quilley. Paradise Lost by John Milton, with Dennis Quilley as the poet. Episode 36, in which God decrees that Adam and Eve must leave paradise.
To heaven their prayers flew up, nor missed the way by envious winds blown vagabond or frustrate. In they passed dimensionless through heavenly doors. Then, clad with incense, where the golden altar fumed by their great intercessor, came in sight before the Father's throne. Them the glad Son presenting, thus to intercede began.
Unskilful with what words to pray, let me interpret for him, me his advocate and propitiation. All his works on me, good or not good, engraft. My merit those shall perfect, and for these my death shall pay. Accept me, and in me from these receive the smell of peace toward mankind. Let him live before thee reconciled, at least his days numbered though sad, till death his doom to better life shall yield him, where with me all my redeemed may dwell in joy and bliss, made one with me, as I with thee am one.
All thy request for man, accepted Son, obtain. All thy request was my decree. But longer in that paradise to dwell, the law I gave to nature him forbids. So let us call to synod all the blessed through heaven's wide bounds. From them I will not hide my judgments, how with mankind I proceed, as how with peccant angels late they saw, and in their state, though firm, stood more confirmed.
He ended, and the sun gave signal high to the bright minister that watched. He blew his trumpet, and the joyous sons of light hasted, resorting to the summons high, and took their seats, till from his throne supreme the Almighty thus pronounced his sovereign will.
O sons, like one of us man is become to know both good and evil, since his taste of that forbidden fruit. But let him boast his knowledge of good lost and evil got. He sorrows now, repents, and prays contrite. Lest therefore his now bolder hand reach also of the tree of life and eat, and live for ever, dream at least to live for ever, to remove him I decree, and send him from the garden forth to till the ground whence he was taken, fitter soil. Michael, this my behest have thou in charge. Take to thee from among the cherubim thy choice of flaming warriors, lest the fiend, either allied to man or to invade vacant possession, some new trouble raise. Haste thee, and from the paradise of God, without remorse, drive out the sinful pair from hallowed ground the unholy, and announce to them and to their progeny from thence perpetual banishment. Yet lest they faint at the sad sentence rigorously urged, dismiss them not disconsolate, reveal to Adam what shall come in future days. So send them forth, though sorrowing, yet in peace. And on the east side of the garden place, where entrance up from Eden easiest climbs, cherubic watch, and of a sword, the flame wide waving, all approach far off to fright, and guard all passage to the tree of life.
He ceased, and the archangelic power prepared for swift descent, with him the cohort bright of watchful cherubim. Meanwhile, to re-salute the world with sacred light, Leucothea waked, and with fresh dews embalmed the earth, when Adam and first matron Eve had ended now their orisons, and found strength added from above, new hope to spring out of despair, joy, but with fear yet linked, which thus to Eve his welcome words renewed.
Hard to belief may seem, yet this will prayer, or one short sigh of human breath, upborne even to the seat of God. For since I sought by prayer the offended deity to appease, kneeled and before him humbled all my heart, methought I saw him placable and mild, bending his ear. Persuasion in me grew that I was heard with favour. Peace returned home to my breast, and to my memory his promise, that thy seed shall bruise our foe, which then not minded in dismay, yet now assures me that the bitterness of death is past, and we shall live. Whence, hail to thee, Eve rightly called, mother of all mankind, mother of all things living, since by thee man is to live, and all things live for man.
Ill worthy I such title should belong to me, transgressor, who for thee ordained a help became thy snare. To me reproach rather belongs, distrust, and all dispraise. But infinite in pardon was my judge, that I, who first brought death on all, am graced the source of life. Next favourable thou, who highly thus to entitle me, vouchsafed far other name deserving. But the field to labour calls us now, with sweat imposed, though after sleepless night. Let us go forth. I never from thy side henceforth to stray, where'er our day's work lies, though now enjoined laborious till day droop. While here we dwell, what can be toilsome in these pleasant walks? Here let us live, though in fawn state, content.
So spake, so wished, much humbled Eve, but fate subscribed not. Nature first gave signs, impressed on bird, beast, air. Air suddenly eclipsed after short blush of morn. Nigh in her sight, the bird of Jove, stooped from his airy tower, two birds of gayest plume before him drove. Down from a hill, the beast that reigns in woods, first hunter then, pursued a gentle brace, goodliest of all the forest, hart and hind. Direct to the eastern gate was bent their flight. Adam observed, and with his eye the chase pursuing, not unmoved, to Eve thus spake.
O Eve, some further change awaits us nigh, which heaven by these mute signs in nature shows forerunners of his purpose, or to warn us haply too secure of our discharge from penalty, because from death released some days. How long, and what till then our life, who knows, or more than this, that we are dust, and thither must return and be no more. Why else this double object in our sight, of flight pursued in the air, and o'er the ground one way the selfsame hour? Why in the east darkness ere day's mid-course, and morning light more orient in yon western cloud, that draws o'er the blue firmament a radiant white, and slow descends, with something heavenly fraught.
He erred not, for by this the heavenly bands down from a sky of jasper lighted now in paradise, and on a hill made halt. A glorious apparition Michael stood, not unperceived of Adam, who to Eve, while the great visitant approached, thus spake.
Eve, now expect great tidings, which perhaps of us will soon determine, or impose new laws to be observed. For I descry from yonder blazing cloud that veils the hill one of the heavenly host, and by his gate none of the meanest, some great potentate or of the thrones above. Such majesty invests him coming, yet not terrible that I should fear, nor sociably mild as Raphael that I should much confide, but solemn and sublime, whom not to offend with reverence I must meet, and thou retire.
He ended, and the archangel soon drew nigh, not in his shape celestial, but as man clad to meet man. Over his lucid arms a military vest of purple flowed. His starry helm unbuckled showed him prime in manhood, where youth ended. By his side, as in a glistering zodiac, hung the sword, Satan's dire dread, and in his hand the spear. Adam bowed low. He kingly from his state inclined not, but his coming thus declared.
Adam, heaven's high behest no preface needs. Sufficient that thy prayers are heard, and death, then due by sentence when thou didst transgress, defeated of his seizure many days given thee of grace, wherein thou mayest repent, and one bad act with many deeds well done mayest cover. Well may then thy Lord, appeased, redeem thee quite from death's rapacious claim. But longer in this paradise to dwell permits not. To remove thee I am come, and send thee from the garden forth, to till the ground whence thou wast taken, fitter soil.
He added not, for Adam at the news, heart-struck with chilling grip of sorrow stood, that all his senses bound. Eve, who unseen yet all had heard, with audible lament discovered soon the place of her retire.
O unexpected stroke, worse than of death! Must I thus leave thee, paradise, thus leave thee, native soil? These happy walks and shades, fit haunt of gods, where I had hoped to spend, quiet though sad, the respite of that day that must be mortal to us both. O flowers, that never will in other climate grow, my early visitation and my last at even, which I bred up with tender hand from the first opening bud, and gave ye names, who now shall rear ye to the sun, or rank your tribes, and water from the ambrosial fount? Thee, lastly, nuptial bower, by me adorned with what to sight or smell was sweet, from thee how shall I part, and whither wander down into a lower world, to this obscure and wild? How shall we breathe in other air, less pure, accustomed to immortal fruits?
Lament not, Eve, but patiently resign what justly thou hast lost. Not set thy heart thus over fond on that which is not thine. Thy going is not lonely. With thee goes thy husband, him to follow thou art bound. Where he abides, think there thy native soil.
Adam by this from the cold sudden damp recovering, and his scattered spirits returned, to Michael thus his humble words addressed.
Celestial, whether among the thrones, or named of them the highest, for such of shape may seem prince above princes, gently hast thou told thy message, which might else in telling wound, and in performing end us. This most afflicts me, that departing hence, as from his face I shall be hid, deprived his blessed countenance. Here I could frequent with worship place by place where he vouchsafed presence divine, and to my sons relate. On this mount he appeared, under this tree stood visible, among these pines his voice I heard, here with him at this fountain talked.
In the 36th episode of Paradise Lost, the readers were Robert Glenister, Godfrey Canton, Linus Roach, Mark Straker, and Federe Holmes.